All right, so another good one. I'm going to tell you the best kept secret about making money waiting tables. It is undoubtedly just this is part of the reason why I think it's a perfect job for anyone who doesn't know what they want to do in their life. Uh, I'll just start by saying servers today, on average, most servers are making way more money than they would have made 10 years ago. And I'd be willing to bet you that servers 10 years from now will be making way more money than any server is today, on average. I can almost guarantee you that fact. I want you to think for a second about what people consider a good tip. Average service, I've always heard that 15% is, what you leave for average, decent service, decent tip. It's whatever. More often these days, I'm hearing 18%, which is good for everyone who's in the industry, that the general population is thinking higher, because the higher they think, the more we get paid. But a good tip is 20%. And it is so important that it's a percentage, right? It's so important that it's a percentage. Why is it important? It's because every single time your restaurant raises prices, you're going to get a pay raise. Straight up. Like, whatever that menu price says is going to be what your tip is based off of. Excuse me. Well, why would a restaurant raise prices? In the short term, let's say there's a meat shortage. I knew a guy who works at a wings place. He said there was a chicken shortage, so they had to start. There's a chicken shortage, so they had to start charging more for their wings. Fine. I mean, in the short term, until a chicken shortage goes away, you gotta stay in business. I know mom and pop restaurants that when the stimulus checks came out, they bumped up their prices a little bit to eat up some more of that general public money. Also, I've known restaurants that have rare items. Like, let's say you have a really rare wine and no one's really ever ordered it. It's kind of not on the menu. It kind of is. But, wine sits. The longer it sits, the more it's worth, blah, 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 blah. You're more able to charge for that wine until it's gone. And then after it's gone, it's gone. You're not going to make any more money off of it. There are some other reasons that a restaurant would raise their prices. Area improvements. So let's say that your restaurant's in the middle of nowhere, and then 3 years later there's a sports arena next to it. You're going to jack up the prices a little bit, because if people are willing to go pay to see college football, they can probably afford whatever food you're selling. It really is. I mean, if people are hungry, they're fucking hungry. Like, it's okay. Like, they can spend an extra $5, $10, $15. Increasing food costs. So, like, some things do and don't cost more. I mean, the McRib only comes back when pork's at absolute rock bottom prices, if you've ever heard of that. There are certain reasons that prices of things go up. There are certain reasons that fast food restaurants bring back menu items, and it's because of the price of food. Like, as strange as it seems, there's not one consistent price for, like, cattle. Cattle are exchanged through contracts of, I'll pay you $1,000 now for $3,000 worth of cattle later. But food costs tend to increase relative to demand, right? So if there's a lot of demand, food costs are going to go up. There's also operating costs. Like, let's say the cleaning materials for your restaurant are getting more expensive. The chemicals you use to purify your water. Everything's Ecolab certified these days. Let's say Ecolab jacks up the prices on chemicals. Your restaurant's got to make up for that somehow. Like, they're not just gonna sit back and let themselves be price gouged. Food's a competitive industry. You got to stay on top. There's also another reason. If you're working at a corporate place, not specifically mom and pop, but corporate, then you got to appease the shareholders. Like, if you work at a Darden restaurant, Olive Garden, Longhorn, Cheddar's, any of those, the people who own stock in that restaurant want to make money. They want to make more money They want to be paid their dividends. They want to see the price of the shares increase. They want to see shit appreciate. They like making money. So the owners of your restaurant want to make more money. But there's a huge the whole big reason that I'm even making this video is because of a topic that's been in the news a lot lately, but I've pretty much been keen on since I started waiting tables, and that's inflation, right? As inflation goes up, your restaurant will be forced to raise menu prices or go out of business because the cost of food, chemicals, blah 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 blah, all gets more expensive. Over time, everything gets more expensive. It's a feature of the U.S. dollar, pretty much, that everything gets more expensive. In order to offset the increasing prices, your restaurant's going to raise the menu prices, and that gives you as a server a raise. I've pretty much ran out of notes, but I want to continue on this and make it a point to say that you should keep a pretty keen eye on how your restaurant over time handles rising food costs, rising chemical costs, rising whatever. If your restaurant starts cutting portion sizes, in essence, they're avoiding raising the menu prices either to keep clientele or, like, if your clientele is older especially, they're very sensitive to price increases. Most of them are on a fixed income, so price increases will cut more into their living expenses. They won't feel as though their dollar's going as far. So it's called shrinkflation, when the shit of shit shrinks, or the size of shit shrinks, the size of shit shrinks, but the price stays the same. That's not good for you. What you want to see your restaurant doing is keeping the same portion sizes, but, knock up the price $1, knock up the price $2, knock up the price however much they need to knock up the price. That side used to be $1.29, now it's $1.50. Things like that, small, continual price increases, because as your dollars become worth less, right? I have a $100 bill in my pocket. Been carrying it around for a while because I haven't put my tips up. A few years ago, $100 bill could have bought you a pretty nice dinner for 4 people, right? By a few years ago, I'm talking, let's say 2000. In 2000, I could take me and my friends out to eat on $100. Now, I take my girlfriend out to eat on $100, and it pretty much feeds just the two of us. But also, servers in 2000 definitely weren't making, on average, as much as servers on average are making now. I remember when I started serving that $100 was a significant amount to hit. $100 was a big deal. It meant that you really killed it that night. But now, more and more, I'm seeing newer and newer servers blow past the $100 mark. Not consistently, let's say. Let's say if they're, a $70 a night average server, they'll hit $100 more than they used to. That is a feature basically built into the menu because people tip on a percentage. It's so important to realize that if you work any other job, right? I've worked as an editor at a news company. When I got a raise, it wasn't based really on percentages. It wasn't based on inflation. It was based on, like, my responsibilities increasing, or me putting in extra work, or things like that. When you're in the restaurant industry, you kind of get a pass. You're kind of going to be doing the same thing now that servers 10 years from now are doing. And you're doing the same thing servers 10 years ago did. But you're making more money because your restaurant needs to stay competitive, one, against other restaurants, but two, to keep themselves above water. So there's really no end point to this video, but it's important, like, to internalize that part of your benefit of waiting tables is that you're pretty much going to have a similar standard of life if you do it for a while. Like, you might not make a ton more money, right, every year, but I've noticed a steady increase. I've tracked my tips the entire time I've waited tables. Year after year, I have noticed a steady increase in the amount of tips that I get. And it's in no small part is that due to inflation and the fact that restaurants need to raise their menu prices to keep up with that. And as long as servers are tipped on a percentage, you're going to continue to be able to maintain a relatively stable quality of life. If the median average pay in America is $50,000, if it ever goes up to $60,000 and corporate America doesn't squeeze more and more money for, Mr. Jeff Bezos, then if it creeps up to $60,000, you'll notice that, you're not making $50,000 as a server yet. You're kind of making $40,000 right now. But if it creeps up, you'll notice that you'll start to make more money. So the fact that your restaurant has a menu that is tied to inflation that you get a percentage of changes the game. And I think that it's severely under talked about or under realized in the service industry that you do get a raise every time the restaurant raises prices. It costs more to eat there, but if you're a server, do you really want to eat the food you smell all day? It's awful. But I personally really appreciate the fact that every single year I've ever worked in the service industry, I've gotten better. So my tips are based on my performance, right? But not only that, I can push the upper end year after year and make more, not only due to my own performance improving, but the restaurant is forced to give me an extra percent because they start selling stuff off the menu. Anyway, it's the end of the story. It's the end of the ramble. I'll talk to you all later.